such a buzz about Hillary Clinton's visit to Australia. And it's a real reminder of the importance of getting the story out. We had Julia Gillard speak at our event a few years ago, and what really stood out is when she spoke about the challenges as an everyday woman and what she does behind the scenes to battle all the politics and all the challenges that on a day-to-day basis that she was really challenged by. And I know that you have really shared what happens behind the scenes for you and, you know, your TED Talk, which I absolutely love because you bared it all, and well, nearly all, but being able to share what's happening behind the scenes, because you've done it, what did you have to go through to do that?
I found it very liberating, to be honest with you, because as women we all share similar challenges. Now I know that sounds strange when you're talking about Julia Gillard up here and the rest of us down here, particularly women in very low paid industries just living hand to mouth, you know?
Yeah.
But as women we go through similar challenges, whether that means being judged for being a woman or being valued for our appearance alone or not being taken seriously, not feeling like we're having our voices heard. When we share those stories, we share those vulnerabilities and we connect with other women and we know that we're not alone. On top of that, women like Julia Gillard or Hillary Clinton cop an awful lot of trolling and backlash.
Absolutely.
And that's the modern day version of, you know, people thinking, oh gosh, the structures of society being shaken up, people might be losing power who've had power for decades or centuries, and they're frightened, and that's why they troll these women, they call them these names, they tear them down. You know, that's where we do need to join together as women and say that's not good enough.
Yeah, that tall poppy syndrome, I hear that a lot from particularly women that have come into Australia and they've been working in other countries. And they really feel the difference. They just don't feel, and you said it before about, I need to feel that people have got my back. How do you think we can break that down so that we can have that, you know, that authentic feeling that we are working towards the same goal and we do have each other's back?
One of the great platforms for that is social media. Now I know that there's a danger with that, with the trolling that I spoke about before, but we can connect with women all over the world. We can share our ideas, we can get each other's support, we can have each other's backs. There's loads of wonderful women's websites now where we can read language and comebacks and, you know, analysis of what we're going through. And I think that strength in numbers is incredibly powerful.
It's a good idea to actually think about the positives, because Brene Brown talks about what happened after her first TED Talk and how, but it actually fueled her, empowered her to keep talking as well, which then created this awareness that it's okay. People are going to try and bring you down, but you can actually push through it. In terms of what you've gone through, what have you found to be supportive, to be able to build that inner strength when you do have, you know, whether it's on social media or whether it's, you know, through other forms of media or through the workplace? What do you do to strengthen yourself from the inside?
I actually think self-care is very important, and I know that you're really into this as well with your yoga. You've got to find that third space where you can be away from work, away from, you know, family life, even if it's for a brief moment during the day where you just sit by yourself and read or have some deep breathing, you know, just some space where you can settle your mind. I think that's the next challenge that we will have, because women are so busy with paid work, doing the vast majority of unpaid work in society. If you don't have that kind of self-care, that's what will ultimately bring us down. I mean, you're obviously very conscious of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've just done some studying around positive psychology, and there's just so much that we can now track back in terms of evidence around how the brain can change when we are positively supporting our thinking as well. I think that word self-care is a wonderful word to replace the word selfish, because I often hear people saying, oh, I'm being a bit selfish today.
Yes. And that's a really good point, because women are such givers and carers. That's the way we've always been viewed in society. And I see that with my boy and girl. My girl, because she's expected to be more caring, is more caring. And because my boy is expected to be, we call him the privileged white boy. Stop being such a privileged white boy. He sort of expects people to bring things to him because he sees that around him in society. So it's, you know, telling kids not to do that, obviously, but also with adult women saying, look, it's okay to look after yourself. And that doesn't have to be framed in a way that's selfish. It can be self-caring, and that means you can continue to care for others and care for yourself.
Absolutely. And I love that analogy about, you know, the oxygen mask on a plane, that you have to put it on for yourself. And we often talk about in our programs now that if you're not doing it for yourself, in some ways you can bring back that negative bias about being selfish because you're not able to pay it forward. You're not able to be there as well. I think that resilience and well-being in the workplace is so important. So what are some of your self-care strategies?
Oh, I do yoga and paddleboarding and breathing and meditation and all of that kind of stuff when I have time to do it.
Right.
But in the last year, I have made time for it. No matter how busy I am, I've said, right, I don't care what's happening. I'm just going out. I'm going out for an hour, whether that's walking the dog or doing any of those other strategies. I think you've got to carve out that time for yourself. Otherwise,
Absolutely.
it all comes tumbling down.
And usually it's when we're busiest that we need it the most as well. So it's actually how do you build those resources, and as a team as well, how do you support each other so that when you do hit the bumps in the road, you can navigate around them rather than it becoming too big as well.
And don't you think it's true that you can't be resilient without taking that time for yourself? We talk a lot with our political leaders. I know Julia Gillard's spoken about that,
Yes.
Hillary Clinton has, you know, that resilience is very important, but that resilience comes from a lot of self-care and a lot of centeredness and a lot of strength within here first.
Yes, and when Julia Gillard spoke about resilience, it was interesting. It was the small things that matter. So she spoke about sitting at home on a Saturday morning with the family, like she said it was just the normal activity. If this is what we do, we have a coffee together on a Saturday morning when she was in town, and they would all have the jokes and the I suppose, you know, just the banter that was the norm. And she said it was sort of like her space that she could be real and have that familiarity. This is the real Julia that we heard about. And I think it is about having those small spaces that actually can create that state of it's okay to do what you need to do. There's no judgment about it. You don't have to do it A, B and C. It can be your way of doing it.
And I think women's friendship groups and women's, you know, work colleague groups are really powerful here because you can use humour to share similar experiences, and it's almost like, you know, a valve that lets off the pressure.
Absolutely, absolutely. We talk about slack time now that women need, you know, for leaders need to schedule unscheduled time, and it used to be just for reflection, which is important, but now we're seeing just to connect, to be able to have the coffee, to be able to get out and have a conversation at somebody's desk without thinking, I have to get back, that deadline, I'm the only one to do it. Actually having some space so that other people can also connect with them the same way.
You've touched on a really interesting point that I want to talk to you about, and that's what I see as the cult of perfectionism amongst women. I speak to a lot of young women, and I see in them what I've seen in myself for years, which is if I can't do everything at a certain level, then I don't want to do it at all. It's like everything's got to be absolutely right. Jane Caro's really wise in this area. She says everything, you don't have to tick all the boxes. It's that old, you don't have to tick all the boxes to apply for that job.
Absolutely, and Sheryl Sandberg says done is better than perfect.
Definitely.
And I think we need to be aware as well that when we do take it to that level, it's actually not sustainable.
It's very damaging.
It is, and for others as well. And perfectionistic style is the most overused style globally. So you spoke about humour before. I often find people that have got a very strong perfectionistic style, if they can connect to humour, it can actually bring down the tone and enable them to take a breath.
Oh, that's a really good point, because you end up with perfectionism being so uptight and everything has to be like this. You're holding on like you're holding your breath the whole time.
Exactly, exactly. And you know, we're actually finding out about this idea of screen apnea. We're holding our breath when we're at the
Oh,
computer.
how interesting. I didn't know that.
And we're going into the fight or flight in our thinking, because who's copied in? What are they going to say about me? Holding our breath. So it's actually being able to breathe through it and take that space and maybe even have a laugh occasionally. How refreshing that would be.
Humour is the key. I love
Humour
it.
is the key.